Alright guys, today we have Kane Howard's truck here. It's a 2012 48 RE swap truck that has our Anteater Pro controller on it. And he's pretty sure he broke an input shaft. So today we are on destination fix a transmission. So we're going to pull it out and upgrade to a fat shaft and go through his trans and repair anything necessary and go back together with it. So the customer is from Tennessee. He dropped off and he plans on coming flying back in here in 2 days to drive his truck back home.
So blowing this case off, we got this trans in here. It's a broken input shaft, and so we have Kane Howard's transmission here. Came in with a broken input shaft. It's a TCS Canada Aeromat shaft. See the stator broke as well. We're going to upgrade it to a TCS Arizona fat shaft. We got the machine stator support here to take up for the larger shaft. These are his clutches out of his transmission. He's got his forward clutch back here. Nothing really wrong here. They are worn down a little bit. Originally these are 65 thou thick clutches. They're about 58 thou now. We're going to replace these just because we've upgraded the clutch now. We run the GPZ clutch in these. The direct clutch, you can see there's a decent bit of heat in these. We're going to replace these as well with the GPZ clutches. Overdrives that already had overdrive clutches in the overdrive brake clutch. It's already GPZ, but you can see you got some warpage in the steel. We're going to replace these as well. The overdrive directs we're going to reuse. These very rarely go bad. This is reverse band. You can see there's not much material left on here. The retainer for the servo, you can tell is bent. The piston blew out. Intermediate fine. Other than that, everything inside was pretty good. We just replaced the few parts that were bad and get them back on the road.
On a valve body like this, got it from Dibbles, we have a broken input shaft on the transmission. Really, it's mostly the same as what I'm normally doing, except here I'm looking to make sure that none of the trash from any of the broken parts has stuck any of the valves. Make sure that this being a valve body that someone else put together, make sure that there aren't any other modifications different from what we're used to. I can see here I got to the converter clutch switch valve. This is basically the valve that turns the converter clutch on and off. This has metal debris and it's stuck in the bore. I can't get it out. I'll have to get you know, the pieces of, usually the pieces of input shaft will come straight through the stator support and right into the valve body here, right to the switch valve. And also the pressure regulator valve is also stuck. I can't pull it out by hand. When there's been metal parts wearing on each other, like a broken input, or if there's other parts that are wearing together, it makes this metallic paste, which really makes it tough for the valves to move. It gets wedged between the bore and the valve, and the valves get stuck. valve body starts doing funny things. So really, I just try to take it apart, make sure everything is free, get any large metal debris out, clean it completely, check it, make sure there's no abnormal wear. There's a hard anodized coating. You can see when these get worn, you can see the coating gets worn off, and that's a good sign that there was some extra wear there. So if there's something like that, inspect the bore especially much. Many times if you have a catastrophic failure and there's a lot of metal debris that comes through the transmission, you'll take the valve body apart and there's this internal filter here. A lot of times you'll see that full of trash, and the filter will actually blow open, and then you get a lot of that debris all through the valve body. This one here, fortunately, there wasn't so much trash. This one's pretty clean, but you can see here, once we took this apart, the switch valve that was stuck, you can see there was actually a piece of input shaft that was down in the bore, and that's why I couldn't get that switch valve out of there. You just have to keep cleaning, keep looking for debris like that, and figure out why those valves are stuck in the bore. Another thing, it was just, I noticed in tearing it down, it's really doesn't have anything to do with the broken input shaft per se, but here on the actual the shift linkage, this is what actually moves the valve, manual valve in the transmission, and selects each gear. Here where it has a stop where it goes against when you put the truck in park, you'll see this a lot of times when there's maybe a misadjusted shift cable. Sometimes the detent here can be worn. We'll see this a lot of times where guys, the transmission doesn't want to go into park. You have to really take the shifter and slam it up into park to get it to register park. A lot of times guys will need to do that to get the truck to start, because the truck needs to see that it's in park or in neutral to be able to energize the starter to have your truck start. So here it's been slammed up into park so many times it's actually cracked this piece here. So that's something that you need to look at. It can cause misadjustment of the manual valve in the valve body, and it's just a piece that will put a new piece in there. And so just another piece that you need to look at as you're taking things apart. Inspect everything, look for just tiny features like this.
Today it's Saturday, and Josh and I got here. I took the kids out for breakfast and brought the kids over here. They were playing around the shop, and we are going through Rudy'S transmission. Saturdays is usually when we end up doing race truck things or our personal transmissions. Rudy'S trans had a delayed lockup. Basically, she noticed racing. We had her set up for 770, and she'd hit the lockup switch, and sometimes there was a 3 to 5 second delay. So we just tore the transmission down, trying to see if the lockup valve is sticking in the valve body. I just went through the valve body. The lockup valve did have a little bit of a catch in it. I was able to polish up the valve and get it stroking nice and free. I'm not 100% sure that was a problem, because it moved free enough that I would think that pressure would still overcome that little bit of a catch. But we vacuum tested the stator tube and the pump. Everything checked out good. The clutches still look great. We did change the direct clutches because it still had the old style clutches that we used a couple years ago. They were in brand new condition, but we went to the GPZ clutches because they're a little more aggressive, and we just like those clutches for long-term horsepower. So we're going to put this thing back together and put it in the truck with a refreshed torque converter, and hopefully the lockup issue is gone.
And we're going to send her on her way!
No, don't listen to him. And should be all set, but we've got one more week till Rudy's. She's trying to race at Rudy's. Landon is currently putting the quad cab back together. I'll let him show you what happened to it. I gave a ride to a customer last week, and we actually cracked the block. So that was the OG block that we put together winter of 2015, and it tried to blow the crank out the bottom like we've done in the Pro Street truck, but this one lasted a couple years and it finally had enough. We had a hairline crack behind the ECM, so we're actually pulled the motor out of charity case and are putting it in the quad cab so we can make the last points race of the year. So that's what Saturdays are here at Firepunk.
Alright guys, so we got Rudy's prep here coming from the fall race, the final finale, or the final race of the ODSS point series. And come back from Florida after a win in 670 class in the quad cab, thinking we're ready to go. We just got one more race to wrap it up, and we run into a bit of a hiccup where notice we had a bit of oil coming out, or a bit of an oil leak. It turns out to be a little bit more than just an oil leak. We had cracked the block. Really lucky that it happened while we were still here, not at a race. Because of that, I'm swapping the engine. Charity case broke an axle in Florida, so we pulled the engine out of Charity case, 590 truck, and I'm in the process of swapping everything over. We've got 4 days before we leave or 5 days before we leave for Rudy's now, and I need a truck to race for 670, so I'm stealing the motor and making a party out of it.
These are the clutches we pulled out of the directs of Rudy'S truck, and like I said, they're perfect condition, but this material, what we've seen over time, I mean, for a daily driver, tow truck, they work great. On a 800 horsepower and up truck that is making horsepower, we've seen these burn and not shed material as well as the GPZs. So the GPZs we have here, this is a little bit more aggressive clutch, and these do a good job of, as they wear, so when the clutch is applying and it wears in, it will actually shed its material instead of glazing and burning. If you get a glazing on a clutch, you'll use like 20% of its holding power. It's kind of, I mean, that's a guesstimation number, but that's really what you want it to do. A clutch can be kind of like a brake pad, so the more you use your brakes, the more clutch dust you end up on your wheel. With a clutch inside a transmission, this is a wearable part, and as you use it, it will wear and it sheds dust. That's why we ask guys to change the fluid often enough. You know, basically, the more power you're making, the more you're racing, the more often you need to change your transmission fluid and your filter, because that dust from your clutches is shedding down into your pan, and if you wait too long, and then it will actually suck all that dust into your filter. Now the valve body can't suck fluid through the filter, it'll collapse it, you'll lose line pressure, and then you actually have a premature transmission failure simply because you didn't do your maintenance. So some of that stuff is just something that we've learned over the years as clutch companies like Rudy'S and BorgWarner. All these companies are always working to make better products. So what we're using today, I feel works really well, but in 5 years from now, there might be better clutches that we switch from this to the better product. So if you see that you have the old style clutches in yours, don't worry about it, because they really are good clutches. It's just something that we found the GPZs are better in a high horsepower application.
Hey guys, I want to show you something that happened while we were down in Florida, just kind of getting around to fixing it before our Rudy's trip. This is the rear hub of the 9-inch that's on my truck, and what we had happen in between the first and second rounds, these bolts that hold the caliper on here, we had all of these back out. When they backed out, they ate in to this surface to where it basically just chewed it up, and it's to the point now where the bearing inside of here is all locked up to where it won't spin. So we called Mosier, ordered up a new hub, new bearings, and we're going to try to get this thing back together and ready for Rudy's.
So we're getting the S10 ready for Rudy's. We're hoping to head out tomorrow night and get some test hits in on Thursday. I don't know if you guys remember, but we had some injector issues back at Rocky Top, and so we had put our spare set of 500% in, and we've been running those ever since. So now we're going back to the original set. Really, the other set of injectors did everything we needed them to do with the fuel quantities that we're running, but with these injectors we're able to run higher rail pressure, so we're able to get the same amount of fuel in a shorter amount of time. So just switching back to these just because we like that shorter injection event if we're trying to turn the power up at all. So doing that, doing oil change, transmission fluid service, just kind of normal stuff. Have a few bars I need to straighten out on the wheelie bar. The upper bars flex quite a bit during the process of racing, and those have gotten bent enough that it makes it kind of difficult to adjust them, so I need to straighten some of that stuff out. Just a lot of little odds and ends stuff, trying to getting everything buttoned up and ready to go.